Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and Sandra. Instead of talking about what you should get, we philosophize about vehicles that probably 99.9% of us retards can't get anyway. These are vehicles that were very expensive and are still very expensive now because they are very expensive.
Lyrical, miracle, spiritual, individual, criminal.
At the price that manufacturers were charging, you would think that these cars offer a cure for erectile dysfunction, hypogenitalism, or super baldness. As every normal individual with two functional brain cells knows, the only remedy against this is to subscribe to this channel and like this video for the algorithm and share it with your free personalities with everything you have. So let's start with the Lexus LFA. The LFA was released in 2010 and is Lexus' only supercar to this date. Unfortunately, the car is not made for low earners, as it was only built 500 times and had a starting price of $375,000 at the time. If you want one now, you can pay up to $1 million, and the emphasis is on if. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that Paris Hilton had one, but probably not. Personally, I would love to have one and would put it in my living room instead of a couch, where I would then sit naked on it and do it in a very modest way. You can now also see the design in the Lexus LC500, which has been around 2017. However, it only has a 5-liter V8 naturally aspirated engine. The LFA, on the other hand, has a 4.8-liter V10 naturally aspirated engine and sounds like a depressed alcoholic that has to go cold turkey. Diligent viewers of this channel would comment at this point that it sounds more like Sandra, who hasn't had any wiener for a week, but you can share your thoughts in the comment section. There went 10 years of development into the LFA. They simply wasted 4 years of development because during a spirited session full of happy-making pharmaceuticals, they thought, let's ditch the aluminum chassis and build everything out of carbon now. This cost time and a lot of money and is one of the reasons why the Lexus made a loss on every sold vehicle. The engine and the sound were created in cooperation with Yamaha, and as we just heard, the result was one of the most puristic car sounds that the car has ever produced. In the end, the car was unfortunately still a flop because the Nissan GT-R was cheaper and better in almost all aspects. The LFA only had a 6-speed torque converter transmission and no dual clutch transmission, and initially you could only lease the car through Lexus in the USA after paying $300,000 up front, then paying another $12,000 a month, and then having to pay another $90,000 at the end to buy it out. Let's move on to the most expensive thing Ford has ever built, the Ford GT. Similar to Porsche's 911, Ford also didn't see any need in changing a design from 1964. In 1963, Henry Ford II wanted to buy Ferrari because Ford wanted to improve their non-existent performance image. The guy who founded Ferrari discovered a clause while going through the contract on the day it was signed and dramatically resigned because Ford was extremely greedy and also wanted Ferrari's racing division. As a result, Ford did everything himself, and in 1964 the first Ford GT40 racing car came out, which of course flopped because Ford had no idea about racing. So they then hired Carroll Shelby. He pampered the car, and in the 2000-kilometer race in Daytona they were even able to beat Ferrari because they had a flat tire. Unfortunately, that was also the only victory of the season, and Ferrari was from then on a kind of Dinkelberg for Ford. In 1966, Ford was finally able to win the 24-hour race of Le Mans and defeat the crazy Italians and continued winning until 1969. One of the drivers was the guy who later invented McLaren, just by the way. The Ford GT40 went down in history as one of the sickest racing cars of all time, and Americans are not known for being that good at racing, because they were already considered very clumsy and fat back then. In those times, racing was everything for a car manufacturer. Ferrari wouldn't be Ferrari today if they hadn't had this history in racing. Bentley's origins were actually in racing before they became fancy. In 2002, Ford presented the Ford GT, which looked very similar to the GT40, only with newer technology and roadworthiness. It was built for 2 years and over 4,000 times. Exactly 101 cars were intended for the European market and sold for 177,000 euros at the time. Now you can get one for nearly $500,000, but that's not even expensive compared to the newer model. Since 2016, Ford has been building a new GT that was only built until 2023 and is limited to 1,350 vehicles. In order to be even considered to buy one, you have to undergo more weird application scenarios than those for the military. You have to state how often the car is driven, how active you are on social media, how many Fords you have already owned, and introverts, listen up, have a personal conversation with a stranger. It wouldn't be surprising to me if they also wanted to measure your sausage. Do you know why the car came out in 2016? Well, it was exactly 50 years since they beat Ferrari at Le Mans. Their rivalry is more violent than in hip-hop, where illiterate, underage people declare who the bigger junkie/loser is. When it was new, Ford asked at least $453,000 for it, and now $1 million is a price you should get comfy with. But you get over 650 horsepower from a V6 bi-turbo EcoBoost engine, which gets you from 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. It also emits more CO2 than the current Mercedes G63 AMG. But let's deal with an eco-friendly supercar, Porsche 918 Spyder. Here, sad figures with pungent smell of sweat would like to throw tomatoes at you because you are supposedly damaging the environment, but with the index finger raised, you then have the right to reprimand them with a traditional pimp slap. Why? Because a theoretical consumption of 3 liters of petrol is possible, where you theoretically only emit 70 grams of CO2 per kilometer due to the fact that this car is a hybrid, which means you can ignore the 4.6 liter V8 engine with over 600 horsepower. The Porsche 918 is the successor model of the Porsche Carrera GT, the car in which Paul Walker got toasted in the passenger seat. In contrast to the Carrera GT, the 918 is not a death trap that shouldn't even be allowed to be street legal today. The 918 has a naturally aspirated 4.6 liter V8 engine and 2 electric motors, and therefore it has 887 European horsepower. That's enough in order to reach 60 miles per hour in just 2.6 seconds and another 4.6 seconds to reach 120 miles per hour. But this car can do more than driving in a straight line. Unlike its predecessor model, the Carrera GT, it is indeed able to get corners at high speed without failing. It finished the Nürburgring in less than 7 minutes, which is very fast. This Porsche was built between 2013 and 2015 and had a base price of $845,000. The number of cars is limited to 918. If you want to buy one now, you have to put over 1.4 million on the table. Porsche probably felt bad for the customers and offered them a special model of the Porsche 911 Turbo S until the 918 was completed, of which there were only 918 as well. With Porsche people being Porsche people, they bought each one of them and got neon yellow stitching and carbon fiber in the interior on their regular Turbo S. In order to get one now, you have to be lucky, and in Europe, currently only one is for sale for 180,000 euros. Compared to the next vehicle, this is only for low earners. The LaFerrari from Ferrari is a hypercar that is the direct successor to the Ferrari Enzo. Ferrari is also moving towards this sad future and is slowly taking advantage of the whole electric hybrid stuff. So a 6.3 liter V12 was used with over 800 horsepower and an electric drive system with another 163 horsepower, which is only there to accelerate the tires more. In that sense, it's a hybrid, just with a different goal. As long as it almost has 1000 horsepower, that is fine to me, since the legal gangsters don't know anything about anything. You just have to tell them that electric motors are used. Ferrari probably simply kept quiet about the V12 and hid the fact that it cannot drive purely on electric power. Don't hate the player, hate the game. The newest topless version is nicknamed Aperta and was only built 210 times. As a result, it is highly exclusive, and the last one built was made available for an auction. The proceeds of this auction went to the organization Save the Children, which has a CEO who gets several hundred thousands as a salary a year. The car went for 8.3 million euro. The CEO of the Save the Children organization, which probably don't pay taxes, is very happy because her salary was saved for this year once more. The LaFerrari was only only built 499 times at the base price of $8.4 million. Of course, it sold out immediately and was worth twice as much a short time later. If you want one just to keep it in the garage for the eternity, you only have to pay at least 4.2 million euros. The Mercedes SLR McLaren Stirling Moss is a little more expensive and a little more exclusive. At first glance, it looks like a retarded concept vehicle, but there is a little bit more history behind it. Because McLaren is awesome, Mercedes worked with them. The result was the Mercedes McLaren SLR, which was limited to 3,500 cars. McLaren and Mercedes had some difficulties, and like the last meeting with an ex-partner, they created something. They decided to build a vehicle together one last time, and the result was one of the rarest roadster vehicles of all time, the Mercedes SLR McLaren Stirling Moss, a homage for the Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe from 1955 on acid. Although that initially sounds like an extravagant name for a foreskin, it is actually the name of the concept vehicle that unfortunately never went into series production. The model name comes from the British racing driver Sir Stirling Moss, who set a speed record on a rally with such a car in 1955. A total of 75 were built. The price of the SLR Stirling Moss was over $1 million when it was new, but in order to get one you already need to have an SLR among other things. Of course, for the price there was no air conditioning or windshield as standard. For an additional charge of around 20,000 euros, something was installed as a courtesy that would allow 5 cm less wind to hit your face. Very practical when the top speed of this car is around 350 km an hour. A 5.4 liter V8 supercharged engine with 650 horsepower is installed. Mercedes connoisseurs would now know that the 55 AMG from various models had a 5.4 liter V8 supercharged engine as well, but the engine here is called M155 and is based on the M113 from the 55 AMG. It was redesigned with new parts, etc. So that in the end it is a similar but still a slightly different engine. To get into the secret group chat where other SLR Stirling Moss owners are, you would have to put down at least an estimated sum of $3 million, if you even find one for sale. Of course, there are significantly more vehicles that are also very expensive, but in order to make your head not overheat, we will leave it for today. If you want another part, write it in the comments down below which vehicles should be included or how many brain cells you have less now, I don't know. If you want to support us, please like and subscribe for more intellectual nonsense based on automotive topics.